What's up? Today we are on Copacut Trail in Westport, Massachusetts.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Shit, looks like my other video, same shit. Today we live in a world dominated by Neo-Liberalism. The belief in unfettered free markets and... The belief in unfettered free markets and small government. Since the late 20th century, almost every major government has embraced policies like privatization, deregulation, and free trade. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Alan Greenspan pushed for the idea that
greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
And that competition would alone make everybody better off. The result? A boom in global finance and corporations, but also growing discontent. Ordinary wages have stagnated while rich pull away. And the top 1% shares of income roughly doubled from the late 1970s to the 2010s. Today's high youth unemployment, climate crisis, and debt burdens feel like legacies of this era. Young people across the world are asking, is there a better way? To understand how we got here, we must take a few steps back. All the way back to when money was tied to gold itself. Centuries ago, nations literally kept vaults of gold to back their currency. In practice, paper was just a claim on gold. You could exchange banknotes for a fixed weight of gold. This system took the shape by accident when Britain's master of the mint, none other than Isaac Newton, overvalued gold relative to silver. Suddenly, Britain found itself in a de facto gold standard, anchoring its money to gold's value. As the British Empire grew into the 19th century, other countries followed suit. By the late 1800s, most big powers, UK, France, Germany, etc., had formal gold standards. The US stayed bimetallic until 1900, but effectively had a gold line currency. The 1913 Federal Reserve Act even required each Federal Reserve note to be 40% backed by gold. In effect, $20.67 worth of paper was 1 ounce of gold. Exchange rates were locked. For example, it was $4.86 per British pound of gold. This meant world trade was stable, currencies moved together with gold. However, gold acted like handcuffs. Countries could not easily print money during a recession without depleting gold reserves. When World War I broke out in 1914, nations abandoned gold to pay for armies and systems unraveled. Attempts to revive it in 1920s and 1930s failed. The Great Depression especially crushed confidence in any gold regime. In short, the gold standard era was one where money was as real as the gold behind it. Imagine playing Monopoly, where each paper is redeemable for a pile of gold coins. That was global finance during World War I. Many economists note that the system actually lengthened the Great Depression. And by 1940, all countries have dropped the gold standard domestically. Famously, President FDR confiscated private gold in 1933 to let paper float. In 1944, delegates met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, where 44 nations rewrote the monetary rules for the post-war world. After World War II's devastation, the world leaders vowed never again. In July 1944, they met at Bretton Woods and set up a new system to prevent the chaos of the 1930s. The core idea was fixed exchange rates. The US dollar would be pegged to gold, $35 per ounce, and all other countries would fix themselves to the dollar. The IMF and the World Bank were created to oversee this. For the first time, money was largely fiat, but still indirectly backed by gold via the US Treasury. Each country promised they could always trade dollars for gold at $35 an ounce, at least in theory. This gold exchange standard made the dollar the world's reserve currency. Think of it as a new global money. In practice, countries' trade imbalances were settled in dollars. For a while, this system built the Cold War boom, but it relied on the U.S. having gold to back its printing. By the late 1960s, persistent U.S. deficits meant more dollars were overseas than in gold in Fort Knox. In 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility. Suddenly, no currency was pegged to gold anymore. World exchange rates went floating. In just 2 decades, we went from gold-backed national money to pure fiat money worldwide. Reagan and UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher became icons of the Neo-Liberal revolution, promoting free markets and smaller government. With the gold rule gone, the question was, who controls money? In the 1970s, many economists stalled under post-war consensus policies. Enter Neo-Liberalism, which argued that the market knows best. Reagan in the US and Thatcher in the UK famously slashed taxes on the rich, deregulated industries, weakened unions, and privatized state-owned companies, from airplanes to utilities. They painted big government as the villain and believed economic growth would trickle down from the top. This model spread globally. International bodies, IMF, World Bank, and new Washington consensus policies pushed poor countries to open trade, liberalize banks, and adopt austerity. Across Europe, Latin America, Asia, and beyond, the dominant message was the same: free capital flows, free trade, free markets. Financial capital suddenly crisscrossed the globe. Investments and loans moved with few barriers. The idea of capital liberalization was like opening all valves in a dam. It unleashed a torrent of money. In short, neoliberalism meant money became ever more virtual and credit-driven. For young people today, the 1980s transformation sounds familiar. We're still living with Reaganomics. The workers' rights and public services were shrunk. Financial markets were enlivened. As journalist, as Mark Bittman said, too many are suffering now because too few were fighting then. The economy was growing, but so was the iceberg of inequality. Over the past few decades, the cost of neoliberal rule has become clear. The rich have gotten vastly richer, while the rest of us have been left behind. In the US, the top 1% share of income jumped from about 8.5 in 1976 to over 20% in 2014. In the UK and elsewhere, the trend is similar. Meanwhile, middle-class wages have barely budged, and many public services like healthcare, education, public transport have seen funding cuts or privatization. Neoliberal policies also depended on economic instability. Rapid financial liberalization helped trigger the Asian crisis of 1997. An economist, Joseph Stiglitz, said excessively rapid financial and capital market liberalization was a key cause of the 2008 meltdown. The 2008 meltdown was, in many ways, a product of deregulated finance, savings and loan failures, Wall Street's risk-taking. Even the Washington's consensus dream of stable growth failed to materialize for most people. Corporate power concentrated. An economist study found 2/3 of industries became more monopolized between 1997 and 2012, raising prices and inequality. Democracy itself has been strained. Neoliberalism often looks like a rigged game. Hunger for an economy that works for everyone and not just the wealthy is growing. Austerity budgets have erased social safety nets and let big companies reap profits from things like housing, medication, and energy. To a young person today, the era of neoliberal rule has delivered stagnant opportunity, chronic debt, and the feeling that the game is rigged. For decades, our economy has been trapped between two nightmares: crushing debt and the explosive inflation. Every fix seems to cause a new problem. Print too much money? Inflation. Tighten up? Recession. But what if we're thinking about money the wrong way? Introducing PoEV, or Proof of Economic Value. It's not just any cryptocurrency. It's not a coin you spend at the store. It's a reserve asset, like gold used to be, but better. Because PoEV isn't mined by machines or hoarded in vaults. It's earned through real economic action. Here's how the loop works. The US takes on debt. Nothing new there. But instead of wasteful spending, these funds go to something productive: housing, railroads, clean energy, medicine, things that improve lives and grow the economy. These projects produce EOEV, proof that real value was created. That PoEV is held in reserve, just like gold or treasury bonds. Other countries want in. They swap their reserve assets, like US bonds or euros, for PoEV. Why? because it's stable, valuable, and backed by actual progress and not speculation. Country A swaps $100 million in bonds for PoEV. The US receives dollars and uses them to stimulate the economy further. The US pays debt using newly issued USD, but only because PoEV was made from value. The capital comes into the US, strengthening the dollar, and when the US services its debt, it can print dollars without causing inflation because every dollar is matched with PoEV, backed by real-world value. In fact, during deflationary crises, the system becomes a superpower. While others are forced to cut spending, we can just inject value-based liquidity into the economy. It's not fake stimulus, but PoEV-backed investment. Unlike gold, PoEV isn't scarce by nature. It's earned through value. Unlike fiat, it's not arbitrary, it's accountable. And unlike crypto, it's not speculative, it's purposeful. This is the future of money. Not just based on trust, not based on extraction, but based on proof of value.